Okay.
So,
we're recording.
So, hi everybody. This is part 2 with Katrina. And before we get started, please like, share, and subscribe.
Okay. So, thought I'd go back and kind of explain my mom's history because I started thinking about it. And my grandmother, she had to have been a very amazing woman. Not great, but her life must have been very interesting. My mom was the oldest of 4 kids, and my grandmother stayed gone constantly. So my mom raised the kids, and my mom ended up having to drop out of school. I think it was 9th grade. She dropped out because the youngest sibling was an infant and a toddler, and my grandmother would be gone for days at a time, weeks at a time.
Wow.
Mom remembers having to beg the electric company to not cut them off. They would, only thing there was to eat in the house was pancakes.
Oh.
So my uncle, once he became an adult, he never touched another pancake.
Oh yeah.
And my mom met my biological dad while they were kids, and I've heard from both sides of the family that when there was absolutely no food, Mom would pack up the kids and they would walk. And it wasn't just around the corner. They would walk to the other side of town to my biological dad's house so they could have something to eat. When my grandmother was home, it was just as bad. My grandmother was, my mother says, a pig. Just a dirty kind of woman, but when she did want to clean the house, she gave diet pills. Gave my mom diet pills as a kid.
Oh wow.
So that may have
And those
been...
were like meth back then.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I don't know what kind of, if any, addictions my grandmother may have had. I mean, as a young kid, I was told she was dead. So it wasn't until I was 9 that I met her for the first time. My mom and I took a trip out to Fresno, because my mom's from California. And we took a trip out to Fresno, and my grandmother at the time owned a boutique. Now, my grandmother was an actress out in California, but she was a B-movie actress. She was actually in a movie with Raquel Welch, Kansas City Bombers.
Oh, cool.
And I did see that one. Not a great movie.
I'm going to have to check it out anyways.
Oh, you have to watch it, but it's about roller derby. Raquel Welch is a roller. Yep. But, I mean, my grandmother dated the stunt double for, what was that guy's name? He played Beretta.
Oh, Robert Blake?
Yes,
Yeah.
his wife. Yeah, because my mom remembers seeing him and says, wow, you look just like that Beretta guy. And he comes back and says, well, I'm a stunt double, so I guess I would. She's a real asshole. My mom remembers going and, my grandmother was in a commercial for pantyhose. And my mom was old enough at the time to where just the idea of her mother being in a commercial about pantyhose was just absolutely humiliating. And she was an odd woman. Like, Mom says there for an entire year, my grandmother talked with an English accent. She did it well. She pulled it off really well. The reasoning behind it, no one really knows. But it was just a nightmare growing up in that house. There was a lot of neglect, physical abuse from my grandmother, emotional abuse. My mother was sexually abused for years. Mm-hmm. And of course, when she tried to tell her mother about it, she locked her in a closet. So,
that's a proper response, isn't
right.
it?
Right, real supportive. And I remember when we went to visit my grandmother, I was in the living room doing something, I don't remember what. And my mom was in the bathroom with my grandmother. My grandmother was getting her face on and doing her hair, and they were fighting. They were arguing. And I can remember my mom asking why. And they were talking about Mom's upbringing. Mom really, she wanted validation. She wanted an apology. She wanted a reasoning. And according to my grandmother, none of that ever happened. And when I look back, I know my mom was using at that time. So she never got that validation. And my grandmother ended up getting sick. There was a few years that we didn't speak to my grandmother. I don't think my mom had a relationship with her. And then shortly after I got out of high school, I moved up to Ohio to be with my mom and go to college. And my grandmother came down for a visit. And there's a picture of us, the three of us. We went and got our pictures taken. And my mom got so mad at my grandmother because my grandmother kept saying, well, this is my best side. And she just... Mom was just wanting to strangle her. Mom was like, this is not fucking... We're at fucking Sears. You know, I mean, this is not one of your fucking headshots. But I look at the picture now, and I come from beautiful women.
Yeah.
They really are beautiful women. And they're strong women. Like, I know my grandmother, when she was a teenager, she was in a car accident with some of her friends. And she was trapped in that car with a bunch of dead people. Her boyfriend was dead, laid across her dead. And I'm going to say she was in there for a good day before they found him. And her hair had, or at least part of her hair turned white.
Wow.
So, and I know there was a lot of fucked up shit, just what I found on Ancestry.com. I know she and her mother lived with my grandmother's grandmother there for a time because her father was in prison. You know, and my grandmother, when I got older, when I became mom, I should say, my grandmother got sick, and my mom had her move down to Florida, and she lived 2 apartments down from my mom, and mom was going to take care of her. Mom was like, you know, she is my mother, and my mom had come to the point, you know, she got clean, she had therapy, and she knew that her mom was sick.
Yeah.
Mentally.
Yeah.
And she knew she was never going to get that validation. But my grandmother would tell me stories about her grandkids, things that her daughter had done to the kids. And I told my mom about it, and she was like, that lying bitch, she did that shit to us.
Yeah.
Are you fucking kidding me? And she would get so mad, but then she would have to remind herself, consider the source.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I did get to know her before she died, and I was there with my mom when she died. And it was very sad. I felt so bad for my mom because she was close to her in a way. You know, whenever anything good happened, she'd want to go and tell her mom.
Right.
You know, but then now that she was dead, she was never going to get whatever she thought she may have been able to get, you know, like I said, that validation, it was never going to happen.
No.
You know, so when, and she still has a hard time with it. Every November, she gets she sinks into a depression. And mom has always battled depression, which I think is another reason why she's used.
Yeah.
And her depression, she's got a right to be depressed. You know, I mean, she went to therapy when she got clean, and I think even while she was using, she tried to do some analysis. And they were trying to bring back repressed memories, because my mom was kidnapped with her brother. It was her brother's dad that kidnapped him. And mom says that what she can remember is that they were at the ocean, but there was no water. And it's funny how the mind works, because here she is as an adult, but the memory is that of a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
You know, well, in California, where's the ocean with no water? The desert. So, but she didn't know that as a child. She didn't know it's called a desert. All she could say is we're at the ocean, at the beach, but there's no water. So, I mean, and my mom grew up with a woman, all her kids, all my mom's brothers and sisters are from different fathers. My grandmother would leave, go with another man, and she would tell her kids, your dad's dead. You know, and mom knew for a fact that, you know, like my uncle's dad, not dead. You know, and her 2 sisters, he knew that they weren't dead. And my mom did not end up finding her dad until she was an adult. It was right when I graduated high school, right around that time. And by the time she found him, he had already committed suicide.
Oh.
He had committed suicide maybe a month before. He had been diagnosed with prostate cancer, I think, and it was like his 2nd time. And it was one of those, I ain't doing this anymore.
Yeah.
But he had kept a picture of her in his wallet his entire life. So, that was, just, my grandmother, she did what she felt she had to do.
Yeah.
She didn't do it for kids. She did it for her. And I think that's why it's so important that even though my mother did fall into that world of drugs, she stopped the cycle as best as she could.
Yeah.
And that's, as a parent, that's what you do.
Yeah.
You stop the cycle. There's some shit we can't do. The craziness is slowly starting to breed out. But it's important that you stop the cycle. And I think the reason I didn't know my mom was a drug user is because she was so organized about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to come over to her house and do drugs, you had to make an appointment. Seriously, you had to call and make an appointment. You don't just show up at my door to get high.
Yeah.
She's so organized. And then, like I said, when she got clean, she shared with me pretty much, not everything, obviously, but she shared a lot, enough. And I thought, like I said in my last interview, that it wouldn't happen to me. I wasn't my mother. And then I met my son's biological father. And he's 17 years older than I am. And we met when I was 24. And I was living with girlfriends in a high-rise apartment in downtown Dayton, working second shift. So I didn't have to get up early. And by the time I was getting off work, the party was just getting started. It was, looking back on it, it was probably the best time of my life. I had no real responsibilities. We were partying. And when I met him, I knew he was a drinker. But it didn't really bother me.
Yeah.
That's
very socially acceptable.
Right. And one of his side jobs was he would go out of state and to a grower.
Yeah.
And bring back pounds of marijuana. And I went over to his house one day on my lunch break because he lived right around the corner from where I worked. And he was like, go in the kitchen and see what's in the kitchen. And it was mounds of marijuana. And I was like, oh, sweet liberty of life, at last I found you. I was like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah, help yourself. No problem. And, some for me, some for my friends. I walk back into work and I smell like a fucking pot plant. Whatever. It was a good time. But I was also getting that's also when I started getting caught up. Money wasn't going to the rent anymore. Yeah. My roommates were getting all pissed off. So I left. I said I left. Well, I left because he and I were going to get married. He'd asked me to marry him. We'd only been together a minute. But I wanted him to meet my mom before we got married. We were going to get married in August, I think. And I knew my mom wasn't going to like him. My mom don't like anybody I've ever been with. Ever. My mom's the one that, wished I was a lesbian. But really, even if I'd been a lesbian, she probably wouldn't have liked any of the women I brought home.
No. That's our job as mom.
Right. Nobody was good enough. So we go to Florida, and it's January. We had left Ohio. It was 17 fucking degrees. We get to Florida. There's blue skies. There's palm trees. It's 70 degrees. We're on the side of the river. There's dolphins and shit. I'm like, I ain't going back to Ohio.
No.
Fuck that. My roommates are mad at me because I'm spending all my money on dope. I'm probably 45 pounds because I don't eat. Because I'm always fucking high. And I've got this cold that I just can't seem to get rid of.
Right.
So I might want to stay down here for a while. We stayed down there, and of course my mom hated him. And it was tense. We ended up moving to a friend of his. They grew up together, and she was living a good hour and a half. He and his girlfriend were an hour and a half away. So we moved in with them. And in May, I started getting sick. It was like the stomach bug that wouldn't go away. Meanwhile, he's still drinking.
Yeah.
And his buddy is a drinker. They're all drinkers. I'm surrounded by drinkers. And I've never been much of a drinker. I mean, I was before I became legal. And it seemed like once I became legal age to drink, and that's
not
burn out
fun
on it,
anymore.
you know? I've already had alcohol poisoning a couple times, so it's just not as fun. But we had just been talking about how nice our lives are going to be. I can't have kids. He's too damn old. He doesn't want to have any more kids. He's 40. You know, his son is already an adult. His oldest son from his first marriage. Our lives are going to be great. I found out the next day I was pregnant. And I'm like, oh, shit. Oh, there went that idea. So we got our own place, and he was drinking all the time. And Sean was 2 months premature, and he came home on oxygen and an apnea monitor. So he's tethered to all this shit. I was all Butterfly McQueen. I don't know nothing about no babies. I really didn't have any experience with, especially newborns, and now you're giving me a newborn that's got some special needs. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing.
Right.
And his ass stays so fucking drunk that he is a very little help. If he's not at home, passed out on the floor drunk, he's down the road with his friends.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to see this pattern where I'm a single mom. You know, yeah, I'm with this person and we live together, but
it's just another kid to take care of.
Yeah. And there would be times where I had a blanket where I could lay Sean on and, you know, he'd sleep, and because of his achondroplasia and his big head, he didn't crawl for quite some time, so I could put him somewhere and he'd be stationary for, I had a good few months of that, because he didn't really crawl, he rolled. But because he was on the oxygen, I could follow his oxygen cord to find him. But I'm in the kitchen. I'd be in the kitchen, and his dad would come home. His father would come home. He'd lay down on the floor with Sean, and he'd pass out. Well, Sean would start to cry for whatever reason. I'm in the kitchen trying to make dinner, and he is literally laying right by his dad, screaming, "Won't get up." And I was like, man, this is getting old. And so there for a while, I was like, man, this is just not going to work. Well, he was still using Coke every once in a while, and he also had a little penchant for crack. And to me, crack is just so white trash.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm like, really? If you're going to go that way, I mean, do powder or, you know, don't do crack.
Can we not do the crack?
And I mean, it's bad enough we're living in a fucking trailer park, and now you're going to fucking do crack. So tasteless. But I had given him, Sean was 3, and I had given him my last $5 to go get a gallon of milk. And he comes back and he's high because he would grind his teeth.
Yes.
When he was high. So I always could tell.
You're talking like this and there's no milk.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, where'd you go? There's no milk and you're high.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was his last straw. I called my girlfriend and I was like, come get me. I'm done.
Yeah. I
am done. And he's smoking crack out of my favorite pot pipe. And I'm like, you ruined it. You ruined my pot pipe because you smoked crack out of it. Sacrilege.
It doesn't even taste right anymore.
Right! It tastes like crack. And I've tried crack. Don't get me wrong. I have smoked crack. I did it one time. It's like doing a fucking whippet.
It's, it's very disappointing.
It gets such a letdown. You get real high real quick for a minute and then it's gone. I'm like, that's it. And I don't know why people continue to chase that, because you're never going to get it again.
No.
Because even my mom was like, that's why she said she never really got into the crack, because
you're
never going to get that high again.
And it's like, and then you feel awful when you come off of it.
And that's really why I quit doing coke, because I would feel it's like a hangover.
Like, I'm going to have to brush my teeth, eat, take a shower, like, this is, ugh.
And you know, I'd wake up and there'd be blood on my pillow because my nose was bleeding.
Not good.
So I packed up all my dirty laundry, because that's about all I had, and my kid, and I left. And we lived with a girlfriend of mine, and I sat down with his dad, and I loved him. At the time, I thought that was the love of my life.
Yeah.
Loved him dearly. I mean, my son was made out of love. I was not. You know, when my mom got married, she got married to my biological father to get out. She was 15 years old.
Running away from something.
Yeah, she was like, this is my out.
Yeah.
And her brother was really upset with her for a long time. Because she
was like
him.
his mom.
She was. I mean, he even called her mom, even as they became into adulthood. That he called her mom. He would send her Mother's Day cards, and he died a year ago, a little over a year ago, suddenly. And I can remember my mom calling me, and she was like, "My son is dead." And it was heartbreaking because that, other than me, that was her only family. And he's gone. And that, I mean, that she worked for him. I mean, she lost everything in that. But that was her son. He was only like 2 years younger than her, but that was her son.
Yeah.
And so I talked to him, and I said, look, I want this to work.
Yeah. You
need to go and get some help. I mean, he was a machinist working at a paper company, and I said, look, you're drinking on the job. You go to work. He would get up in the morning. First of all, he would come home with a 12-pack, and he would make sure he would try to leave himself at least 3 beers for the morning because he would have the shakes so bad. It got to a point right before I left that the 3 beers weren't there anymore. He was drinking my cooking sherry.
That's pretty bad.
To try to get rid of the shakes.
Yeah.
And then he'd go to lunch, and he'd have a couple beers at lunch. And I let him know, dude, you're running machinery. If they find out you're drinking, they're going to fire you. Because that was his excuse. He didn't want to go to rehab and get some help.
But you're going to lose your job anyway.
Yeah, I was like, dude, they can't fire you for trying to get some help.
No.
Granted, we lived in Florida at the time, and they are a, what's it called, when they don't have to have a reason to fire you. They don't have to give you a reason.
Yeah.
So he said, well, I'm going to be sick if I quit drinking. I know. That's why you need to go to rehab.
Yeah.
They will help you get through it. You have got to do something. But I'm not going to sit here for 6 to 12 months waiting for you to make that decision. This is your family. It really shouldn't be that questionable.
Right. Do it now.
You want to be with us. You want your family. You're going to do what you need to do.
Yeah.
And he didn't. And so I still made sure that Sean got to see him. And, he would get him on weekends. But because we were never married, his visitations were out of the goodness of my heart.
Yeah.
Because I talked to a family lawyer. Because one time he made the mistake of threatening not to bring him back. Oh my God, you don't know who you're fucking with. Sorry, have we met? Yeah, no. And so, I contacted a family lawyer, and he said, even though his name is on the birth certificate, and he claims to be his father, you're not married.
Right.
So, by law, you don't owe him shit. Like, good to know.
Yeah.
But it was at a point where if Sean would go with him, I was sending food with my child to make sure my child got to eat.
Yeah.
And I know, and it was a nervous wreck every time.
Yeah, because you're like, what is going on?
Well, and even when Sean got older and I was still with him, I wouldn't leave Sean alone with him during certain times. If I had to leave and do errands or whatever, I would do it during nap time when he wouldn't have to really take care of him.
Yeah.
And the last time I did it, Sean had gone down for a nap, and his dad was going to lay down with him. And I get a phone call, and I was out with friends. I called to check on him, and he's like, man, I woke up and Sean was gone. What do you mean Sean was gone? He was like, man, I looked everywhere for him. I was like, well, you can't reach the fucking doorknob, so you didn't go out. He said, well, I found him, and I had been reorganizing and cleaning the kitchen, and my knife drawer I had taken out, and all the knives were in the sink.
Yeah.
And because of my size, there was a chair next to the sink for me to reach. Well, Sean climbed up on the chair, went over the sink to the cookie jar, ate every single cookie in the cookie jar, which it was a full cookie jar, and passed the fuck out on the counter.
Oh my God.
Belly all swollen, melting crumbs all over his face. He passed the fuck out on the counter. And I'm like, are you kidding? And all I could think of is what could have happened.
Yeah.
He could have fallen off that counter. He could have cut himself on those knives because his dad was passed out.
Yeah.
Nope, not doing that anymore. You know, when I can't leave my child with you, his father, there's a problem.
Yeah.
So he didn't get help. And finally it got to a point, I met my husband now, who's my husband now, Billy. And Billy had been very open with me about his life in California. And what's funny is, I married a man that's just like my mother. And they hate that analogy because neither one of them can stand the other. But I did. I married, and I think that's why I was with him, because that's familiar to me.
Yeah.
The trauma, and that it's familiar to me. It's what I know. But he was very open with me about he had been a crystal meth addict, and he had done some horrible shit.
Yeah.
And he even told me, you wouldn't have liked me back then. And probably not, but it made you who you are now. His whole family has had a crystal meth issue. But his was bad. And but he pretty much did what I did. He was like, he was done. He had done the rehab thing. He had put himself in rehab. And was like, yeah, fuck this. I don't like being told what to do. No. So this is just not going to work for me. But he got off the meth on his own. You know, and that's something that I do like about my husband. When he's got a will to do something, it gets done.
Yeah.
And he will stick with it until it gets done.
Yeah.
So he got off the meth, and he came down to Florida to just start over. He was like, you know, this is not working for me. He was 26, 27 years old. Mm-hmm. This is not working for me. I'm going to end up, you know, his dad has done prison time. His uncle has done prison time. He himself has done quite a bit of jail time, but he's been lucky and not gone to the big house.
Right.
But he knew if he stayed here, he was going prison or dead. So he left, and we met and started a relationship. And he and Sean's father got along great for a while. We all tried to be grown-ups.
Yeah.
And, you know, but it was, I had told Sean's dad that he could have him that particular weekend. But he had no automobile. So Billy was going to drive him. He was like, you know, I'll take you and Sean out back to your house. But, you know, kind of on the time schedule, there's shit I need to do. Well, his father, Sean's father, was at the bar. And we went to go and get him and see, you know, are you ready? And he just didn't want to go. And my son is in the back seat, daddy, 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 I want my daddy. It was it was late afternoon. The bar was not busy.
Yeah.
Because I had gone in there and said, you know, are we going to, I had seen who was there, and it was mostly people I knew. And I got so mad that I was like, you want to see your daddy? Go see your daddy. I let him out of the car, and he walked into the bar, and even Billy was like, what the fuck are you doing? I am done is what I'm doing. I have had it. And my roommate's husband came out, and I want you out of my house. What the fuck are you doing sending a kid in there? And no, that was not cool. But I was just so fucking mad that his drinking came first.
Yeah.
And again, and so Billy and I left. I packed up my dirty laundry, packed up my shit, and we moved to Ocala. And we were living in an RV, 1977 RV, the three of us. And it's a good thing Sean and I are little people, because, man, 3 normal-sized people couldn't live in that bitch. Mm-mm. But we lived in that for about a month. And Billy is a drinker. He may not be using the meth anymore, but he's a drinker. And he's not a fun drunk. Alexis was like, yeah, no. And I saw sides of him that I didn't like.
Yeah.
You know, I knew he had violence in him. But it just, and a lot of it was yelling and insults and stuff, and he was drunk, and he was just an ugly drunk. But we always managed to get through it. And we ended up getting married. And when we got married, we had both said, even when we met, I'm never getting married. Neither one of us really believed in it. I'd never seen one work.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the marriages that I saw last till death do us part, they made each other fucking miserable.
Right.
You know, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So, but he met me and he was like, oh, no, well, I want to get married. Okay. And I thought that, you know, it would make him feel a little bit more secure. And I loved him, but even when we got married, I knew it wasn't going to last. Because no marriage does, you know, in my mind. And so I went into it thinking that we'll just do this for now. I'll try everything once. And we got married, and again, he just heavy drinker. And I mean drinking more than when you met him, kind of drinking.
Like way out of hand.
Yeah. And now when we were dating, I was at his house, and that's when I realized he was bipolar.
Mm-hmm.
Because he went like a light switch. He turned on me. And I broke up with him. I was like, you have got to get some help.
Yeah.
Because I just left one crazy. I'm not getting with a whole different kind of crazy.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to get yourself some help. And he did. You know, there was no question. He did. And he was diagnosed as bipolar. But I'm thinking, anybody who's ever used crystal meth gets diagnosed as bipolar.
Yeah, because it makes you that way.
It does. I really think it does. I think he has done some damage. And I still think that because he started using at such a young age, you know, and they say that when you use at such a young age, you stop maturing. You stop growing up.
Yeah.
And, I mean, and part of me, I've always called him Peter Pan. Because he's like a big kid. We can do it. You know, it doesn't matter if we have the money. You know, it doesn't matter this or that, but we can do it. No, you can't. But, you know, that it's an endearing part of him, and it's also a part of him that drives me absolutely batshit crazy. So he went and got some help. He got himself some medication, and he hated it. But instead of, unfortunately, with mental health, you got to work at it.
Yeah.
You know,
you have to learn coping skills to go with the
right.
meds.
And he claims we tried therapy. Not really. He would go to his therapist and I would talk.
Yeah.
Because what's so funny about him is that he'll talk to anybody about anything. I mean, he has nothing to hide. He'll put his shit on Front Street until you put him in front of a therapist. And he completely blocks down and shuts down. And yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know, so I'm translating, you know, on his behalf, so he thinks we've done therapy. No, we really haven't. But he did give it an effort, and he was on some medication, and we moved here. After we got married, we moved here, and life was really great. And I was like, this is just what we needed. You know, we just needed a change.
Right.
And his family moved out from California, and individually they each came and stayed with us at different times.
Yeah.
And his drinking picked back up again. So he's drinking on top of these medications, Depakote, Seroquel.
Those are heavy medications.
And I'm thinking, dude, you don't need to be drinking with the meds, first of all, because it makes the meds not work. And secondly, you don't need to be drinking with the meds because they're going to shut your kidneys down.
Yeah.
And it made him into a fucking monster. And I ended up having to leave him. And I left him for 5 years. And I would keep, it was like a penny that just, the bad penny that wouldn't, I don't want to call him the bad penny, but he's like that bad penny that kept turning up. Because all I wanted was a fucking divorce.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, no. I told you I'm getting married one time. Sorry.
Oh.
You're who I married. I'm not getting a divorce. And I know he loved me then, and he loves me now. And he did the best he could with what he had available to him, which was unfortunately very little. And I left him for 5 years. 5 years. And he would pop up about once a year.
Yeah.
A couple times a year. Like nothing ever happened. And I'm like, really? Did you get divorce papers? You know, he wouldn't. The last time
I still remember how it was.
Yeah. Because I was so angry for a long time. And I felt cheated. You know, 'Cause I loved him. I loved him stupid crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I felt cheated.
Yeah.
That, you know, I only had a year and a half. We were together 3 years total. And, you know, if this is my shot at love and this is what I'm ended with, you know, fuck that, man. Mm-hmm. And, you know, while we were separated, I dated, but nothing was ever serious. You know, I never told another man. And it took me a year and a half before I started even thinking about dating again. And that's just because I need to get laid. I'm like, dude, this is bad. Because I can actually remember when I left him, I was like, damn, the last time I had sex is going to be like the last time I had sex. Had I known that was going to be the last time, I would have made a bigger production of it. But, and I just, you know, I thought there for a while I was going to be miserable by myself, raising my kid by myself, but I made it work. And I had sent him divorce papers, and by certified mail, he had to sign for them. It was about a year before we got back together. And he called me, he's like, yeah, I got the papers. And he had walked in, he told me later, he said, I got them. He gave them to me, I walked in, and I put them right in the trash. He's like, I was determined. He was determined not, because he even told the woman he was with at the time, my wife calls me, I'm gone. Sorry, I'm just basically biding time for my wife to let me come home.
Right.
Because it's just so, we get back together, we ended up getting back together, and I have to say, we still have our issues. He was still drinking quite a bit, as you know. But I have to say, ever since this past November, he still drinks, but he likes those big 32-ounce beers.
Yeah.
And to him, that's one beer. I cannot convince him otherwise. And he was like, no, I'm a big, tall dude. This is just one beer. No, it really isn't. It's like 2.5. You know.
That addictive thinking.
Yeah, he can justify anything. But he drinks 2 of those. And that's it. And really, with Billy, a 6-pack. Up to a 6-pack, I can deal with. But once he goes beyond that 6-pack, he gets... Because he just gets so, he talks nonstop. He's vulgar as it is.
Yeah.
But, and he gets annoying, even if he's in a good mood. But if he's in a good mood and he's drinking, he can turn on you. I mean, in a minute, he can turn on you.
And all of a sudden, you're like, what am I dealing with now?
Well, and I used to say about Billy that, when we met, it was like, he's so crazy. And then I married him, and it's like, oh, shit, you are fucking crazy.
Let's hang on for 1 second. I'm going to make